Well, now, welcome to the stage, RTB House. Great. So first up, we've got Vera from RTB House.
You cut.
Yeah, I cut. That was a sign to get off the stage, I think. I'll let you go.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Morning. I'm Vera. I'm a gaming account director at RTB House. We specialize in gaming, particularly today, where I'll talk to you about retargeting and make it easy. How do we make retargeting easy? I feel like since my journey in retargeting, a lot of time I hear people saying, wow, I think we always think about it, something that we need to dedicate a lot of time to, something that we need to have teams working into quite a lot, and we don't have that right now. So today I hope I can show you that it's quite simple, actually. That's what I'm here for. Before we start, I would love to get to know you all a little bit better as well. So if we can do a little bit of an exercise where, for the ones that have tested user acquisition, can you put your hand if you have never tried user acquisition at all? Okay, just a few. Thank you. And for the ones that have tested it, who's tested user acquisition campaigns? Right, great. And the ones that currently are testing on ongoing optimization, there you go, okay, I was wondering. Where's everyone hidden? What about retargeting? Who has never tried retargeting? And the ones that have tested it? Great. And who has it live right now and it's on optimization? Okay, much less, yeah. I think that's kind of expected, right? I don't take it as offense. In fact, 77% of your users are lost 3 days after install on average. So for the ones that have put your hand up for user acquisition, but have not for retargeting, this is where you're missing out, right? Because you're putting all your efforts, your team's efforts on user acquisition campaigns, but you're going to lose your installers pretty quick as well. You're not alone on that space, so it's actually really hard to get metrics on retargeting and data that shows us what's happening with the space, and I feel like that represents it as well and how it is much smaller. Only 30% of apps in general have implemented retargeting campaigns, and this goes back to 2020, which in our space is like, that's a million years ago, right? But actually, there's not a lot of recent data that comes to update that. But when we try and, with our own knowledge of advertisers that we work with and our peers as well, that number hasn't changed much, and it's gaming. In gaming, it's actually very low. We want to look at about 11% at the moment on average. That's the amount of apps that have retargeting implemented on their marketing mix. Okay, so why do you have to test it, and why is it so simple? What are the basics? The first things that people will ask is, do I have an audience size that is big enough for retargeting? Can I do retargeting? I feel like this is question number one. You don't really need a lot. So sometimes a couple of thousands of really good payers is sufficient. Those are already really valuable to you. You know them. You've already spent your efforts as well on user acquisition to get those players back. So you do want to keep doing that with retargeting as well. You do need an MMP integration completed. That's box ticked. And then in terms of launch timing, we're really seeing advertisers getting quite advanced with this now. While back in the past, you would think, my game is not that old, do I have to look at retargeting yet? While now, we're actually starting to see advertisers enabling their data with retargeting partners before their game is even launched. And that's really exciting to see, because it means that everyone is getting way more prepared and in front of the game for retargeting. So when should you start? When is the actual timing that makes sense for you, that works, when you should start thinking about retargeting campaigns? There's no right or wrong answer, because with retarget or anything else that you do, it really depends on your game as well, how it monetizes, your players. But one example that I would love to share with you is that how some advertisers are doing that quite early on now. And it doesn't mean that it works for everyone, but it's how you should adapt. So for night crowds, for example, they have actually enabled their post-back data with us as their retargeting partner at RTB House before they launched their game. And the reason why they wanted to do that is because they were going to be quite aggressive with their user acquisition campaigns as well. And they wanted to make sure that whenever they were ready to start retargeting those users, we had data ready and everything was ready to go. So when we did launch the campaigns, was just 1 month after game launch. So you'll think that's pretty premature. But actually, ROAS was pretty strong. It delivered exactly the results that we're looking for. And the main thing is that whatever efforts they were applying to their user acquisition campaigns were then supported by retargeting. So that money wasn't just wasted. So how you should prepare. Now that you know what you need, it is pretty simple, you're ready to go. What do you need to do to prepare for retargeting? I kind of like to think at it as if you loading your gear up before a boss fight. It's all about preparation. You just want to be strong from there. If you have your preparation done correctly, then it's really smooth. That's the beauty about it. So the main point will be collect and share data. And I know data sometimes is a very sensitive topic to a lot of us in the industry, and how you share your data as well. So what I can tell you about that is that algorithms will thrive on data, right? So we're in an era of AI where we literally talk about it all the time, every day for all panels potentially. But AI needs data, and you know this from using AI so much right now, and how prompting helps the algorithm getting smarter. It is the exact same thing when you work with a DSP that does programmatic retargeting, for example. So everything is about the learnings from your users and how we can pick on that data to make the algorithm smarter. So it's important how you're tracking your key events. What are your players doing within the game? Get to know your players, their journey, what gets them excited, where do they stay engaged, and then that data will be fed into the algorithm, and the algorithm will learn about your players. Data safety is obviously a big thing. Recently I can share from experience that we did work with an advertiser that was not so comfortable sharing data that was non-attributed because they're a big company, their players have a lot of value, and we respect that a lot. But just make sure that when we work with a partner, they have, they're super transparent with you on how they keep data safe and what they do with your data as well, and how they use your players' data. So for example, in our case, we do not mix advertiser data, so whatever you share is purely for the learnings of your games. But then everyone will do it in different ways, and just to make sure that your data is protected. Obviously, more data, the smarter the targeting will be, and the better your campaign results will be as well, right? So that is key to achieve good results. A colleague shared recently an example with me that I thought was quite funny. I'm really sorry if you're not into cars, by the way, because what she said was, this is the same thing as, when someone doesn't want to share all their data and they say, we will just share what's attributed to you. We know we have all these amazing players on the game, but we will just share the data that's attributed to you, not all the data. It's basically the same thing as having a Ferrari, but having it with an engine of a Fiat. She is Italian, so I felt like she could make that joke, and I thought that exactly represents what it is. So if you know that data in your players, just make sure that you're using it to your advantage and to obviously grow and bring them back to the game for you. It is where the power is at the end of the day. So how you should prepare for retargeting in terms of the 4 different stages and steps that you might see when you run a retargeting campaign. So number 1 will be your technical setup. So you already know what you need. In terms of technical setup, you just have to work with your retargeting partners as well to ensure that, everything is being tracked correctly in terms of data. You have all your audiences ready to go. You know what you're doing. Your partner will help you with the integration. Do you have a product fit? And we'll talk about this a little bit later as well, because I think product and how marketing liaises with product teams is also very important. Define your goals. Because usually everyone talks about ROAS, but there's so much more than that as well. So you need to think, what is your actual goal with your retargeting campaign? And then have a post-launch plan, right? So once you're live, what's next? What are you meant to do with that? So one topic that comes up on technical setup quite a lot is deep links. Do we need to have a deep link ready for retargeting campaigns? You do not have to. That's the good news. We do also understand that for a lot of advertisers, you might not be there yet. You're not ready product-wise to have it ready either. Your game doesn't support it the way that you would like it to be. That's fine. However, if you do have deep linking, there's a lot of advantage to that as well, and a lot of advantage to your user experience too, right? So you're directing users exactly to the content that you want them to be at. So for a bit of reference and backtracking on those that are not so familiarized with deep links or tracking links, with a deep link, we can direct your users straight to where they left the game when they re-engage with the retargeting ad. So it can be anywhere that you would like them to land on. You will obviously boost their engagement as well, right? And conversion is likely to be much higher when you use deep links. And in fact, according to AppsFlyer, there's a 2.5% increase in conversion rate when that happens, which is quite significant. And then it's just personalized, right? The user feels like they're welcome back. They came back to exactly where they left it, and just makes all that journey much more exciting. So why is product fit so important? I think nowadays, communication within your marketing and product teams is really, really key in general, but very big when you're talking about retargeting. And I think the way you need to think about it is, what is in there for our players to come back to the game? Is there anything left for them to do, right? Is our game moving forward? Is it being developed? What are our product teams working on? And how do I struggle as in my marketing team to work with them on it and make sure that they understand what are we doing and why do we need those players back? So it's quite important that that feedback is being shared internally as well within those teams. Recently, one of the advertisers that we were talking with was giving me this example where they really struggle that within their product teams, they don't understand that when a player stops playing the game, they get re-engaged with a retargeting ad, come back to the game, but the team that they used to be part with on that game is no longer there because they lost their seat. So once they stop playing the game for a certain amount of time and they come back, they need to start building up everything from scratch again. It's like it's a new game for them. And in this game in particular, they have to build some castles and have other bits, and all of that gets destroyed. So that's a massive gap between product and marketing, because marketing is spending, their budget getting these players back into the game, but then when the players get back into the game, actually, there's nothing left for them there. So, it's something that you must think internally as well and discuss with your team. Does it make sense? Like, are new levels being built, for example? That's quite key. Then on to goals. I feel like if I would ask everyone in here, what would be your goal for user acquisition or retargeting, almost everyone will say ROAS, right? I feel like that's like the big number everyone wants to see. And fair enough, that is what we see the most as well. But think about other bits as well. What is important for you other than ROAS? And once you are kicked off with ROAS and have a ROAS campaign that is delivering and performing well, what else can you explore? And is there anything else there for you? So is your daily active users number important? Can you use retargeting to support that activity as well and combine it with your ROAS campaigns? Do you want to bring non-payers as well back to the game that might not necessarily have such high ROAS, but also have a lot of importance to you? So it's to think about what other metrics matter to you and how you can tailor your retargeting campaigns to deliver that exactly, because your strategy will be slightly different based on what your main goal is. The beauty of it as well is that when you combine both user acquisition and retargeting campaigns together, in general, we see about 60% uplift and retention. So you get that from it already in addition to your ROAS, which is great. And obviously that's just an average, but it does show how combining both activities, it is pretty key. So now on to audience segments. I did promise myself that I wanted to make this presentation really simple because I said retargeting was easy, and it is. But I feel like this is something that it's worth talking about just a little bit as well. What kind of users should you target when you start a retargeting campaign, and where do you start with that, right? A lot of times you'll think, should I just go after our high LTVs? Should I just give a list to my partner of these are my very high LTV players, I want them to be back in the game? Different DSPs will have different products as well, so just be mindful that you have that conversation with your partners and what might work and how do they, help you on that journey and on that preparation will be very key as well. Your audience segmentation needs to be tailored. It needs to make sense to you. It's not what everyone is doing. It needs to make sense to your game and to your product. And then another question you might want to ask yourself is, if you are at a stage where you are testing more than one retargeting partner, should you use the same audience for all partners? And does that mean that everyone is going after the same user? Is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? It's not necessarily negative, by the way, because not that you have to do that, but it means everyone is fighting for those users to come back to your game. And ultimately, that's our main goal. It doesn't really matter who does it. The main thing is that you don't lose your users of high value. So then, in summary, for technical setup, all your preparation, just remember that one size doesn't fit all. Everything is quite specific to you and your game. All player will be unique. Just make sure that it makes sense to you, your monetization, your model. You have a custom solution in general. And it is pretty simple. This is where you'll put most of your efforts in a retargeting campaign, is that first 1 or 2 weeks of preparation. Once that's done and ticked out of the box, everything is just smooth. So this is where you should put most of your attention into. Once your campaign is live, what do you do? And I would love to share some examples with you on this, because you're delivering goals. With user acquisition campaigns, you'd usually be, continue making the algorithm smarter. What can I do to bring more users back? I see ROAS is great, but I want it even better. And you continuously troubleshooting that and trying to improve that with your partner. You're also trying to constantly test new different vendors as well, like who does it better, what's the best algorithm, what's the best, what kind of creatives are there that I can test for user acquisition. With retargeting, it's a little bit different. You definitely can do a lot of testing, but if you want it to be smooth as well, you can. So obviously, make sure you monitor your KPIs and you are on top of it, but also just watch long-term trends and what happens after. There's an example of a really known advertiser that we work with, that when we first started to work together, their goal was day 7, right? ROI, ROAS. And that was for all partners. They run about 3 or 4 different retargeting campaigns. Everyone is doing it a little bit different audiences, different strategy. The goal is the same for everyone. And what they started to notice is that even though day 7 wasn't being hit all the time, for us in particular, while it was for other partners, when they start looking at day 14 and day 30, they saw that our performance in particular was really strong, but not so strong across some other partners. So as conversation develops and campaigns continue to develop, we start to understand, I should look at you differently and how you deliver goals differently, because I'm getting different type of users from it as well. Retention is a bit better too. So while everyone is delivering good performance, they're doing it in different ways and bringing different players back into the game. So just make sure you pay attention to those signals as well and what your partners are delivering, because not everyone needs to be taking the same box. It's just about what has value for you as well, and understand how that partner delivers. Look at user engagement. Retention is obviously also important. Everyone worries with it a little bit. You want to make sure that users continue to be engaged with the game and that it's making sense to them. And then to creative testing. That is quite exciting in retargeting as well, because you can have a way of communicating. It's a channel of communication directly to your players, which you can do through different creatives, what's happening in the game, any new features that you have released. We'll talk about creative separately a little bit as well, but I think that's pretty exciting as well in retargeting. So what do we see when we use dedicated creatives for retargeting in specific? I feel like there's 2 different types. You can either just go with generic creative and use your same user acquisition creative on retargeting campaigns to get players back, and that's fine. But I'm not saying it's the best, because I feel like retargeting is a great opportunity to talk to your users, to your players, and pass them the message that you want them to know about and what's happening within the game. Just use creative for that, right? And then retargeting is all about emotion as well and sentiment. Ola from Banana Games was giving a talk yesterday that I found really interesting, where she was talking about exactly about this and retention and re-engagement within players and how emotion really plays a big part of it. It's exactly the same thing here. You really want to speak to your players directly there. When you do use custom creatives, you see about 3.4 increase in ROAS compared to generic creatives. I mean, people do read what you're showing and obviously see what you're showing them. So that obviously will translate into better revenue as well. So just be mindful of that. And not a lot of effort needs to go into it, but it is important. And then something that is quite cool as well and nice to experiment is specific creative for specific audiences. Again, not something that you have to do, but you feel like you are at a stage where you're pretty stable with your retargeting campaigns and you want to test a little bit more. You can have specific audiences where you just show them specific creative. You might have certain users in the game that have access to specific offers only, either because they are very big VIPs and you want them to feel super special, or the ones that haven't really made a lot of purchases yet, but you want them to, so you can give them a little tease. And this is a really nice way of doing it and quite easy to integrate. So a little case study that kind of illustrates how retargeting is wrapped up and summarized from the very scratch up until a campaign that is matured and developing nicely. This is an example of a casual puzzle title that we currently work with for quite some time. Within a 6 months period of working together, we saw a 52% increase day 7 ARPU, 26% increase on 26 lower cost per engagement, sorry, and the 46% increase day 7 payer conversion. This case study will come out soon, very soon. So put your eyes out if you're excited to follow and who it is with. But it's been a very nice journey and a really good example of how testing different things really helps. So to talk to you about it a little bit into detail, when we first started working with this really known advertiser, data was shared, but there was a challenge. The inactivity window, so the users that we could target, was 30 days. So we'd have to wait 30 days for a user to be inactive before we start targeting that user. In retargeting, well, that's quite long. There are some people that do it, and that's okay. It depends on your game as well, but it is quite long, and it can be challenging at the start. So if you do have an inactivity window of 30 days, be mindful that your testing period with the retargeting partner might be a little bit longer because more data is needed. And this is exactly what happened here. So that first period was a little bit bumpy, and everyone was a little bit, what should we try? And can we test different things? It's not really working out. But we're really lucky that the advertiser that we're working with was very keen on testing and very aware that that was important. So we continued testing different things, testing different audiences, and then we came up with a completely different setup than what we have at the start. So we went from targeting all payers to targeting payers based on their LTV to target payers based on their region, which was a little bit uncommon as well and something that we haven't really done, but we decided to separate it based on region. And then we came to conclude, actually, this is really great because we can see based on regions, where's the best value? We can allocate our budgets accordingly as well and just tailor that. So that started to work really well. We then moved on to creatives. We started to split things into creative types a little bit more as well and where we should have more budget versus not. And then we started to look at goals. So remember that example I shared with you just a little while back there on how it's so important to adapt your goals. This was the case. So the goal was originally day 7, but then that started to not make so much sense as we continued to run our campaigns and started to get to a more matured stage. And then day 14 and day 30 were way more relevant because that's where performance really standed out. So this is a really nice, complete example of adaptation and what you should test and do when you are running a retargeting campaign, especially when you started testing a new partner. And then lastly, what should you expect? So if you have not tested retargeting, but you did tested user acquisition, in summary, and from someone that has exposure and experience with both, what you should expect is that with user acquisition, you have constant change and adaptation, which is exciting, but you constantly need to be working around it. That's just natural, and how to get creative on getting new users back to your game. Retargeting is way smoother, always as smoother as you want it to be, because once you reach the optimal setup, you can just let it sail. But if you want to continue testing it and challenging it and make better, then you also can. And then you just don't need to reinvent the wheel. Once you get it right, that's it. You can just let it go. And it kind of like summarizes the key differences between the two of them once you start thinking about testing it. That's it from my end. Is there any questions at all that anyone might want to share? Hi.
Hi, Vera.
Hi.
Thanks for your talk.
Yeah,
It was
of course.
nice. 2 quick questions.
Yeah.
First one is how Apple's ATT is affecting your retargeting capabilities.
Yeah.
And the second one is when you are trying to sell retargeting campaigns to game studios, who is your target profile on the game studio side? I mean,
Yeah.
you are trying to pitch the same person managing UA, or you go to a more product-oriented profile?
Yeah, great questions. Thank you. Okay, so starting with number one, iOS ATT. That is so challenging, I'm not going to lie. That's why you asked me that question. Personally, I have experience with both, right? So with RTB House, we run deterministic iOS campaigns only. And that means we only target users that share IDFA for iOS. It's the correct way of doing it, and it's, there's definitely no margin for error there, because we know the users we're targeting are the right users, are your users, they shared consent, and they want to be retargeted. That's the correct way of saying it. There's obviously other DSPs that do probabilistic retargeting as well. We did a little bit of a study on this recently, actually, with advertisers that we work with. And we've asked them, what's their experience? And should we start looking at probabilistic retargeting? Is that a solution that you would find important in our product? And actually, a lot of the feedback was that a lot of them have tested probabilistic, but stopped testing it because they thought there was a lot of fraud in probabilistic retargeting for iOS. And that kind of makes sense, because you're shooting in the dark a little bit as well with it, right? And from my experience on retargeting probabilistic campaigns, not RTB House, I can kind of see that, because it's not black and white. So I feel like there's not yet, I might be wrong, but I feel like there's not yet a product that is really clear and transparent on probabilistic iOS and what's being done. I think there's a lot that in the right path, and there's definitely evolution. And hopefully we will get there, because it's so important. So yeah, that's how we approach it. And then your question on who do we approach as in terms of a client. So usually talking to someone that is within user acquisition or retargeting teams when there's that split is ideal, because those are the people that deal with it on a day-to-day. They are the ones that have the pain points as well, right? They will know if it's something that they want to focus on from a revenue perspective as well, and the value that it might bring. So usually those are the people that we try and speak with, because we want to solve their problems. So yes.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? This is your chance. All right. Well, thank you very much. Big round of applause. That was a great talk. Thank you so much.
Feel free to connect if you have any other questions at all. We're looking forward to catching up with you in the conference. Thank you.